Hey, Guru Nation, thank you so much for stopping by, listening, watching, however you're consuming this content. Got a very special guest. There's, I don't know if you guys realize, but clinical research also is pretty big in Europe. And I know I have a very American-centric audience, but Europe, you guys are just as busy. Their CRAs are just as busy dealing with the same issues. And here we have a very special guest, Maria Milas. She's got a background as a CRA. She's super passionate about connecting CRAs. I actually saw her Instagram this morning, CRA Connect. And I had another podcast cancel and I was like, what am I gonna do today? Talk by myself or try to find someone? And it was like almost like divinity, like serendipity. I saw your
Yay.
thing. I saw your thing and that's how it worked. And
Yeah.
you're on. So happy about that, Maria. And first of all, let's start backward. Normally I start with like, tell me how you got started in your career, but as a senior CRA and you've also done other roles like a senior level leadership roles. Why create CRA Connect? What's your goal with this?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, thank you for having me, Dan. And it's a pleasure to speak to you and to just get the community of clinical research in Europe just bigger and make even connections to the US. So that's wonderful. Thank you. Um, well, to be fair, this community, so this project started around 2 years ago. So while I was still a CRA, I kind of saw myself that I was this lone wolf who just went on site and did all these monitoring visits and all this traveling. And I did not have, let's say, a community of CRAs, because even if I had other CRAs in the companies that I was working for, in the CROs that I was working for, because we were all traveling, because we were all, doing our things, when we did get together at the office, we did not have time to connect. We did not have time to chat, to say, this happened to me yesterday at this site. It was so hard. I didn't know what to do. I called my manager. Those things, you didn't have who to tell them. So I started this project 2 years ago. It was called Chronecdotes. It meant to mean CRA anecdotes, because there were monthly webinars.
Chronecdotes?
Chronecdotes. It was called Chronecdotes. What do you think about the name?
I mean, in well, it used to be American slang. Chronic meant marijuana that you're chronically smoking marijuana, but it's a good it's nice. It's
Let's say
nice,
that in
nice
Europe,
nickname.
it worked. Good thing I changed it then.
A good thing, good thing.
So yeah, we started with that, doing monthly webinars where we had people invited in the from the industry. We had study coordinators, we had study leads, we had other CRAs, we had CTAs, we had study, like all types of roles, just because we wanted to give more, let's say, visibility into the roles of clinical research, to have people ask questions, ask their daily questions, and just tell their anecdotes somehow. Now, because of the, as you know, the high quantity of traveling that we're doing at CRAs, and because of the even burden, let's say, we didn't have like a personal life, even, because you would just be traveling constantly, and if not, you're doing monitoring reports. So because of that, I honestly
Burnout.
do not have time. Oh yes, burnout, complete burnout. I did not have time to go on with this project that was, let's say, my hobby, my passion, my second project. So unfortunately, after doing that for a year or so, I had to stop, focus on work, focus on traveling, on those monitoring activities. And then, as you said, I changed the industry. I went into tech, still very in a role that's very related to clinical research and to CRAs,
Yeah.
and still with this passion. But now that I do have more time, and that the passion is still there, and I see that the burden on CRAs is still there, many things have changed, especially with, let's say, the pandemic that we've had in the couple of years. But still, the turnover rate for CRAs is still high. We still have this burden, this stress, this high traveling, this lack of community for CRAs. So that's how I said we
Yeah.
need to take this back. We need to reconnect people.
You're right because I mean, I was only a CRA. I had a period of 2 years where I was a part-time CRA. Actually more than 2 years, 4 years, very
Mm-hmm.
part-time CRA. But I noticed as a site owner, because I've been a coordinator slash site owner since 2006, and I've noticed whenever there was a sense of community that it was lacking, because whenever we had two monitors at the site from separate companies and they would run into each other, they didn't know each other, but they would talk like, and I noticed that at that time. Of course, I didn't do anything about it, but that's for somebody like you to come around and see that that's like that need to be connected.
Yes.
These two strangers don't know each other, but they share the same job, different companies, didn't just on accident that they're there the same day, but there's a
Yes.
bond, like an instant bond, like I know your struggle, you know mine, respect.
Absolutely. Well, do you know what's interesting? And I've always thought about it is when you are a CRA, whether you're working at a sponsor or at a CRO or even sometimes at a site, right? Like it's also common nowadays that sites have their own CRAs, internal CRAs, but there's no connection as well in between, let's say, these industries. When I mean industry, I mean the companies that you're working for. A
Mhm.
CRA from a sponsor usually never speaks to a CRA from a CRO or never speaks to a CRA to a site. Now, in the end, the core activities, the core challenges, and what you do on your daily basis is the same thing, but you never get together with these other colleague CRAs to just share those difficulties. Like when you, as you mentioned, you were on site and you were seeing these CRAs actually being able to relate to each other. It's
Mhm.
because you see those big binders, that ICF, and you know that you're going to be stuck in there for the next 6 hours with their other peers, CRA, who's probably doing the same thing. Different study, but the same thing.
I remember going when I was a traveling contract CRA. I remember going to a big university, a huge university, and there's a waiting room for CRAs before the coordinator comes to get you. All the CRAs stay in this lobby, and I was there. I was frustrated because my coordinator didn't even know I'm there, and I'm just waiting in the lobby like 20 minutes on my phone. And this other CRA comes to me. He's like, "Hey, Dan, I watch your videos." And then we started talking, and he said, "You know what? Are you waiting for your coordinator? Well, get used to that because I come here for 2 years, and this is all they do is make you wait." So you do have like that bond with your. I mean, they're not your colleagues theoretically, but like they actually are. They're doing the same job as you.
Absolutely. And I don't know if it happened to you, but you start to go to the same sites, even though you are, let's say I was a manager in Spain. So there's a lot of sites in Spain, but for your study, you kind of go to the same ones and you kind of even coincide with the other CRAs on their studies, but you start recognizing faces. And
Mm,
it does feel like you create this bond of you're not from the same company, not from the same study. Maybe you don't know their name yet, but you've seen this face and you see it every time you go to this site. So you relate to this person as
yeah.
kind of a colleague who you have at that site.
Yeah, on Facebook, there's a good group, clinical research memes, I think. It's huge, and it's just CRAs sharing stories and some coordinators as well. I saw early on because that page has been around for a long time. The power of bonding, but
Yes.
uh, is CRA Connect meant to be for European CRAs, at least for now?
So that's a great question. I would say that for no, I mean, the same way as I was saying that there is a lot to relate in between CRAs from a sponsor, from CRO, from sites, I think it's the same thing with CRAs from other regions and from other countries as well, and the US as well, and Asia as well. I mean, in the end, we have different regulations. We might have, in the US, you have IRB. We don't have IRB in Europe. We have local ethics committees. So it might work a little bit different from a regulatory standpoint. But in the end, on a daily basis, we still all go to monitor data, right? We still go
Mm,
to check the ISF. We still go to check the pharmacy data. We still go to report protocol deviations. We still find these serious breaches. What do I do now? So I would say no. It's meant to be global to connect as many diverse CRAs as we can and learn from. You never know when a CRA from the US is going to end up in a country in Europe or vice versa, right? So the more, or maybe you're a CRA now, but you're going to be a study manager, a global study manager, and having this access to anecdotes or to information or to daily basis things from your peers. I mean, why not? The more we can reach, the bigger the networking, better.
Yeah, well, definitely. Why not? So, senior CRA, you've been a
Mm-hmm.
senior CRA for like what? It looks like 5 years or more
Yeah,
from your LinkedIn.
yeah,
Um, Definitely not easy. And then you also transitioned to, it looks like more of a like a decentralized clinical trial type of company or something involving tech
yeah. Like a
after
vendor,
most
let's
recently
say. Yeah.
a vendor. So
Mm-hmm.
you're basically becoming more of a generalist because I also think a lot of CRAs, the issues they run into is, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's very easy to just be a CRA for the rest of
Mm,
your life and not even know other aspects of research well, like
absolutely.
tech vendor, for example, or like, I mean, you see the pain points because you're a monitor, but when you
Mm,
are too focused on finishing your report, you're not looking at creating solutions. I mean, that's not your
yeah.
job to to create solutions for the industry. So you're in a way you're blinded by the your workload. Um, and you're not because you've explored other aspects of research. And I actually think that's rare. And I'm wondering why, what drew you to do that?
That that's a very interesting question. If I think the answer is going to take us back to how we started this call, which is serendipity. In a way that, as you're saying, when I was a CRA, the last month actually that I was still a CRA, my manager said, "Well, Maria, this is your performance review. Next thing for you is going to be study manager or operations lead, or what do you want to do next?" So at that point, I thought, wait a second, how many CRAs are we in this company? How many study manager roles are open? How many of us are tired of being CRAs and we want to look, not tired of being CRAs, but tired of maybe traveling, or we've done this
How
already
many
for
are
years.
tired of traveling? 100%?
Yes, yes. But then at some point, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So at some point you think, what options do I have now? So then I was, let's say, lucky at that moment because I was having that opportunity inside my company to move into the study manager role. But at that point, it's when this vendor that I moved to afterwards contacted me. So I will be very honest, and they contacted me for 3 times on LinkedIn, 3 messages with 2 or 3 weeks in between them. But because I saw that message and the role they were offering me, and I thought, what does that have to do with me? How does that have any relation with the CRA role? I at first I didn't even respond until I said, oh, they're coming back more than once. There must be something in my role or in my background that should be relevant to them,
In
right?
America, we
So
say they're thirsty.
exactly that. Well, that's how they were, and I'm thankful and grateful for that. But yeah, that's how I learned that there's other opportunities outside of the CRA path, which is CTA, CRA, study manager, project manager, and then we'll figure it out. So
Hmm.
that's how I learned. And I said, well, what am I passionate about? What do I see? I've always seen as a CRA the struggles that we had, which were technologies that we were using were antique, obsolete, not easy to use. They were the trainings were so it was one of the biggest burdens that we had as CRAs as well. So I thought, look, the future has to look a little bit different for maybe not me as a CRA because I'm not a CRA anymore, but for my colleagues CRAs in the future. I hope technology we can help with technology to alleviate the burdens on the CRA role. So that's how I said, we'll try to apply what you've learned at the sites as a CRA, try to apply that to bringing more technology or bringing newer or technology that makes sense for CRAs also. in our case, the vendor I went into, it's for sites, but CRAs is one of the main ones, the main roles that we're trying to design this up to. So how can we help them? How can we make their lives easier? How can we alleviate the burden? I always say that. How can we, with that in mind, how can we
Mhm.
design something that alleviates the burden?
Well, yeah, I mean that's definitely a theme in this industry. Um,
Mm.
there's a lot that there's a lot of topics that this can lead us into because okay, we can automate, we can make things easier for sites and CRAs, but then how does that automation change the roles of those people? Um, like on the optimistic side, it's gonna change the role. On the pessimistic side, it's gonna replace the role. There's two schools of thought on this, and probably there's a spectrum in between of where reality is.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think as far as the future of the CRA job is concerned as tools become more automated for monitoring, let's say
Mm-hmm.
SDV?
Yeah, it's definitely a concern, and I understand the concern. From my point of view, I think and I hope, I might be an optimistic, but I hope that the tools that we are designing and that are coming up, um, they're going to just help the CRAs to perform their role. I think
Yeah.
there's always going to, like the data we generate in clinical research is so sensitive that even though we might have tools that help us monitor that data, at some point you'll also need to still rely on a human being, especially for those, ethic or moral aspects that maybe a tool will be difficult, more difficult to catch. So I think there will always be a need of somebody, of a human, let's say I, or of a human being checking that data. But maybe instead of doing so much traveling, we do more on-site, like or more in-house monitoring, or instead of checking the ISF every 2 visits, we can do that once a year because we have tools that help us to monitor how it's going. I think it's going to just, at least at the beginning, just change or help or alleviate the role of the CRA. And hopefully the clinical research industry, it's changing towards just, yeah, being easier or making things just easier for all of us.
I think there's things that can be, and I think there's
Mm,
things that no matter what technology. So I'm looking at a LinkedIn message I got from someone.
yeah.
They're not naive, but they're working at, well, I don't know if they're naive or not. I only had one conversation, but they're working at a tech company as well, and I can tell they
Mm-hmm.
don't have much site experience. So they're asking me, "Hey, what tools can we make to automate the study startup process at the site level?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Look, this is where the theoretical meets the practical. There is no tool, right? Because my site, we switched to eReg, we have eSource, we have all those kind of things, electronic regulatory, electronic source, uh, automatically goes into the trial master file, digital signatures. We have everything. Most sites don't have
Mm-hmm.
any of this. They have like paper. Okay. We're considered advanced. It's still not automated. You know why? Ultimately, PI has to sign everything, whether it's digital or
Yeah.
in person. And guess what? My PI, all of them, all three, are very busy. They're seeing patients 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing automated about them. One of my PIs doesn't even check his email during the day. He's not checking my email when I see patients. So what kind of tools can you automate? It doesn't work, and there's a fine line between creating elegant tools and having this idea. And there's another thing about the reality of the work we do boils down to very busy people who the last thing
Absolutely.
they need is another login. Last thing you need is another login.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember myself, and I had this conversation not long ago with another CRA, and we were saying, at the beginning we are told or we are trained to go on an SIV, on a site initiation visit. And this is how it's supposed to look. You have everything together in a room. You have your 4 hours, hopefully, ideally, of everybody in the room where you can go through the protocol, the ICF, the investigator
But not
brochures,
the
the trainings,
PI
the
for four
vendors.
hours. You don't, in Europe, they don't go 4 hours, do they?
Exactly, there it is. So that's what you're told. Now, when you get there, you are told, Maria, you have 2 hours in total, the room. Now, in these 2 hours, everybody who's going to participate in this study will just pop in. They will just pop in for 5 minutes, they will go, then the study coordinator will go. The PI might come around 1 p.m., so be ready for him.
Might,
So
might.
that's how that's how an SIV looks like in reality, right? So how can you prepare, how can you automate that? What
You
tools
can't.
does that help?
There's no tools. I remember getting well, we have three PIs. Most of them are newer at my new site here in Arizona. And I remember the first SIV letter I got, and my PI was CC'd on it. And he came to me, he's like, they're coming for SIV. I'm like, yeah, they come. That's good. And he said, 4 hours? He said, I'm like, no, 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 don't worry. They have to put that in their email. That's 4 hours for me. If for you, it's 5 minutes, if they're lucky. And he's like, oh, okay, much better, much better. So that's the reality of things.
Exactly. One of the things one of the missions or the objectives that I came back to this CRA Connect group on LinkedIn was because that's the reality. But as a CRA, when you join, when you start being a CRA, that's not what you're told. You're never going to be told, Maria, you're going to be to go on site. You are supposed to take this time with the PI, or not even. Let's not even speak about the SIV, which is the main thing. But if we speak like of a monitoring visit, the monitoring plan says that Maria, you're going to meet with the PI in person every 2 visits. Now, does that happen? Are you supposed to? What if you finally get an appointment with your site? You finally were told that you can go on Wednesday. That's it. That's the only option you have for this month. Now the PI is not going to be there. What do you do? But you have backlog in your monitoring because there's been so much data to do. There's maybe a database log coming up and you're late, and the sponsor is not approving extra monitoring visits. What do you do?
Do you know that's such a common occurrence that you
Hmm.
just described? I've heard this being asked in job interview dozen times from students of
Yeah.
mine. And most of them, because they've never set foot in a clinic, they don't know how to answer. Well, what do you do if you show up to your IMV and the receptionist says the coordinator's not there?
Exactly.
The wrong answer is to say I'm gonna go home. That's a news flash, guys. That's the wrong answer.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the right answer? Figure it out.
The right answer is
How?
do what you gotta do, get your hands on the source documents, get your hands on the
Exactly.
regulatory, and do what you gotta do.
Exactly. Exactly. But that's one of the things that, as you said, you don't know them until you get on site, until you get that experience, or you get to speak to somebody who's been there. Now,
Yep.
if you don't have that luxury of being connected with somebody or of having been on site and having experience, the first time you go on site, you just freak out and you have no idea what to do.
hmm So tell me then, Maria, about your career because it seems like you became a senior CRA pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Um, how did that work? And I guess what do you like most about CRA and what is your least favorite aspect?
Well, great questions, Dan. So when I joined, I'm curious actually. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm not sure if in the US it's the same thing as in Europe, but in Europe there's this big importance being given to having my apologies. My kitty wants to say hi. No, she does
Oh,
not
don't
want to say
worry,
hi. She will come back.
my dog will come say hi to you.
But in Europe, there's a huge importance given to masters in clinical trials or coming from a very scientific background. If
hmm
you do not, let's say it's hard, or you are supposed to maybe find some obstacles into being a CRA. Now, that was the let's say that was my example. In a way, I'm my bachelor degree is I'm a linguist, so I studied translation and interpreting languages, specialized then in like medical translation and biomedical translation. But then I always knew that I wanted to do something more hands-on with research, with helping drive or helping to get drugs on the market and help somehow even a little bit helping patients' lives, saving patients' lives. So I said, what can I do? Now, I had like a couple of trainings, a master in translation and biomedical and pharmaceutical translation, one of these fancy names. And that the director of my master said, Maria, well, you are very interested into clinical research. Why don't you have a look at the opportunities out there, starting as an assistant to CRA? And then maybe that will help you just gather some experience and be a CRA, which is a role that you might be interested in. So that's how I heard about the role of a CRA. And before that, I never even knew that that existed. Like
Very
the
good
clinical trial
advice.
industry, absolutely. Like I will even say I owe all my career path since then to the director of that first master.
That's
But
crazy. I mean,
it
they have those see, that's like an example where that degree was helpful. It paid off.
indeed, exactly.
Uh, because of that. Like that alone was worth the price of the curriculum, really.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. But in contrast, after that, let's say that I started as a clinical trial assistant, and then I was helping, the CRAs from the office to just documentation, basically quality checks, all that. And then I was told, well, Maria, you don't have this scientific background. What about if you want to be a CRA, just do this master in clinical trials?
Mhm.
And I said, because sponsors, when they look at your CV and they accept you as a CRA on their trial, they would like to see, something more scientific. And I said, okay. We made this agreement with my manager that if I was doing this master in a year, I would become a CRA. And that's what happened. I did the master while I was in my role of clinical trial assistant. And I will be very honest, most of everything that I was told or I was taught, I already saw it within my experience as a clinical trial assistant. And
Right.
I've learned many things, but most of them were how to do the things by the book, how to do the proper things, the
Yeah.
4 hour site initiation
4 hour
visit.
SIV. Yeah.
Exactly, instead of the 5 minutes with your PI. Now, that's what made me think, oh, maybe the reality is not exactly what you are taught, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's how I
That's
became a
so
CRA.
that's such a good concept. I think I learned that from my dad. Both my parents are international medical graduates from Romania that
Mhm.
immigrated here when I was 3. I'm actually born in Europe, by the way. Um, moved here when I was
Well,
3. But
that that's very interesting, Dan, because I did not realize that, but I just realized now I'm Romanian too.
you're Romanian? I had no
Yeah,
idea. I was born in
thanks.
Oradea.
Well, that's very nice. Yeah, from Zalău, which is like 40 minutes from Cluj-Napoca. We're not that far away, actually.
No, my parents went to med school in Timișoara.
In
Th
Timișoara.
that's probably where I was conceived, actually. They
Well, see,
it
that's
was before
serendipity.
they got married, and I didn't realize till I was like 15 when I did the math. Wait a minute.
What does
But
that mean?
it was like my mom was pregnant during the wedding, but she didn't show it. Um, my dad told me this when he's an IMG, so he's a doctor. He told me there's theoretical and then there's practical. In theory, you learn the rules, and when you're actually doing something, you learn the exceptions. That's what he told me. And this can be applied to every, like what you just said, the theory of a SIV, 4 hours. When you're actually in practice, 5 minutes for this guy, 10 minutes for this guy,
Hmm.
20 minutes.
Hmm.
You don't learn that in the books though, because they can't. How could they teach you that in a book? The chapter would be so confusing. Who's
Yes,
going to read
yes,
this? Who's going to
yes,
read that book? So that's the
exactly.
difference. That's the difference.
Exactly. And back to your question of how did you kind of like move very quickly into being a more of a senior CRA? I think it's because one of the main skills that the CRA should develop is just adaptability, just to adapt, to be resilient, to kind of say, okay, this is what I came prepared with, but this is the reality. This is this is how my monitoring visit is going to look like. That this is what I find when I'm at the site. How do I fix this? How do I work with what I have? And I think that's what I tried to maybe work most on in my first years as a CRA. And I think that's what helped me then see, well, maybe I like to be a buddy, what we call it here in Europe, just be a buddy to junior CRAs. Maybe I can help to just bring them with me in my monitoring visits and show them how you can be this adaptable CRA or this resilient CRA to just solve or come up with solutions to what you face in your monitoring visits.
And what's your least favorite part about being, well, what's your favorite and your least favorite? We can't escape these questions.
Absolutely. I will respond to that. I think my favorite part is that when you partner with your sites, when you partner with your study coordinators, when you partner with your investigators, you become even friends. You have this in like relationship where you go through your challenges together, and you can understand from their perspective how what you do and how you help them actually gets them to have like a better life, a better day-to-day activities. Like what you do and what you ask from your sites has a huge impact on them. It's not you're not working isolated, you're a team. And that collaboration with different roles, with I wouldn't say multidisciplinary team, but just very different roles. Somebody from science, somebody from pharmacy, somebody an anatomopathologist, and me, who has no idea about that. But we create a team and we work together. And that for me is one of the best, putting aside that we're helping bring drugs on the market that save people's lives. That is like the big one, right? The main
Yeah.
purpose of it all. But this collaboration, I think it's my favorite part. My least favorite part has also been Excel trackers.
Excel
Excel
trackers,
track,
yeah.
yes, yes. Excel trackers with quality checks, with your monitoring visits, with your the CVs as everybody at all the sites that you have in all of the clinical trials that you have. The huge Excel trackers. Those are my worst nightmare.
My nightmare as coordinator is arguing with my CRA on the EDC, back and forth. My coordinator, I was doing this yesterday with my coordinator, and one of my CRAs put, please refer to ECRF guideline of how to handle this situation. And I'm like I'm telling my coordinator I'm training. Why doesn't she just tell you what to do? Why does she make you go to this? First, you have to find this manual, and then who knows what page it's on. We opened it, the thing 174 pages. And I told my
Yeah,
coordinator, Desiree, I
yeah.
said, look, this is the worst part of being a coordinator, right? Like the best part, in my opinion, dealing with patients. The worst part, this. You got to answer these queries, and they're busy, so they don't tell you, probably because they don't know how you're supposed to answer it, but you need to figure out. So look on page whatever it was, 90 of the ECRF, and it was something very simple, but it took like 10, 15 minutes because
That's where, Dan, I wish we as CRAs understood the burden that it puts on you at the sites, and we just check that. We just tell you that. And I know it sometimes come from I as a CRA, I don't want to tell you what to do sometimes because it has like not risks, but let's say that means that I take responsibility over it. But yes, as a CRA, you're the support for your sites, for your study
mm-hmm,
coordinators, for your PI. So if you have an issue with entering the data, that's what I'm there for as a CRA. That's why I should know, I should be trained how to properly enter the data. Like
mm-hmm.
there's I'm not sure if you've experienced this before, but depending on each study, you're using a different EDC system.
Oh
And
yeah,
in each of these EDCs, you might have to log the date in a different format. Some of them require 3 letters for the month. Some of them do 2, or the unknown, unknown, unknown. Sometimes is UN, sometimes is UNK, and
yep.
all these things would just trigger so many questions from my sites, and they would waste so much time from instead of seeing patients or instead of looking for patients for the clinical trials, they would have these fights with the EDC when myself, because I've been trained on the EDC, I can quickly tell you, or I should be able to quickly tell you, this is the issue. Solved.
Exactly,
Two
exactly.
seconds. Done.
Especially my coordinators, there's three of them, but they're all relatively new, and I'm in charge of training all of them. And I'm the lead CRC, so when they don't know how to do something like yesterday, I have to help. And we have 7 studies. And this study that we had 50 queries because it's database lock.
Oh,
And it's a study they were not even doing. So they didn't even know how to navigate the EDC. And neither did I, quite honestly, because it's been months. And the one thing I do like about these technologies is the IRT is
yes,
making the EDC data entry sometimes passively. So that's a little bit better than before. But we're subsidizing that
absolutely.
with more work on our
Oh,
on.
I know. I know. And probably the queries don't only come from the CRAs, probably have data
Oh
management
yeah,
queries,
which are even
sponsor
worse.
queries.
The data management ones are even worse
For us,
because
the
there's no
CRAs as
common
well.
sense. Yeah,
Exactly.
The CRAs at least they think about it. The data manager just doesn't think if it's not
Pops
written
in
a
the
certain
query.
way. Yeah,
Done.
that's
I
my least favorite part about coordinating. Um, as we wrap up, we should probably do like more like part 2 and 3 later, but as we wrap up, because this is a good interview, um,
Absolutely. I'd love to.
there's many ways you can go from CRA. Like
Hmm.
that's the beauty I think of CRA. Like my parents wish that I was a doctor and I was pre-med, but my grades are not good and
Mm,
I got the opportunity to be a site owner at a very young age and I'm like extremely
nice.
fortunate. Um,
Yes.
but I'm noticing that I'm starting to get, oh, maybe since COVID, I think COVID had a lot to do with this. COVID and my fascination with biotech stocks.
Okay.
Those two things got me interested in science because when I was pre-med, I was only interested because my parents said it was good and I had no real interest. I was like, okay, well, I have to do something. Now I'm learning it because I want to, because
Hmm.
I found the passion. And honestly, my like the first 10, 15 years of my research career, I didn't even really care too much about the science. Just to be honest with you. It's only been
Yeah.
these last 3 years that it
Hmm.
started, but now I'm seeing it in a different lens because I used to ignore investigator brochure. And now it's the first thing I look at, like, oh no, but let's see mechanism of action. And now I'm on Google. I used to never do that. I used to just make sure everything's signed and I don't care. I don't care about the drug. That's for the doctor. But now I'm like noticing I'm having conversation with the doctor about these things. So
You're passionate about it.
I renewed my passion because
Yeah.
you have to, it's like a relationship, you gotta renew your passion for it or it gets stale. And with CRA or CRC, there's a number of ways you can do that. Maybe science is not one, but it certainly is for me and many others. For some, it's
Hmm.
technology. I just interviewed my CRA Academy instructor she's like you, senior CRA, got burnt out, and
Mm.
she's loves tech. So she's merging her passion now.
Great.
Luckily for us in the industry, technology and science are combining, like, and AI and big data, all this stuff. So there
Yeah.
are multiple ways to rekindle your passion, and you almost see it like in
Absolutely.
a new lens. I'm curious about yours. Like, maybe you haven't been in the industry long enough, but maybe you have. Like, which way are you going?
I think I'm very clear. For some reason, I've never been more clear than lately, which is for me, it's I have a passion for clinical research. I have a passion especially for CRAs because and it comes from the experience, right? Because I've had the burden. I feel the burden. I feel when I go to an investigator meeting from a vendor perspective and I see their faces when they're put in front of this protocol that is so complex that you're thinking, oh my God, I need to learn all of that. So I feel their burden. So I'm passionate about the clinical research associate's role specifically, and then I'm passionate about technology in a way, not because I know how to code, not because I know how to design these apps, but because I know that's going to be what will help, again, alleviate the burden on the CRAs. And
Mm,
these two things together, I hope it just brings to many things. I hope it brings to more transparency in clinical research, reaching to more investigators, having more investigators in your research. Did you know that actually a very small number of doctors participate in clinical trials?
yeah,
And to me, it's we need research. We especially nowadays, we need new drugs and we need new treatments. We need new applications for the treatment that we already have. So hopefully, with combining research and technology, we get more investigators on trials, more drugs on the market, more patients accessing these clinical trials. So I'd say that's my passion, combining those two things,
that's
research
a
and technology.
that's a good intersection. Tech and mentoring or people,
Hmm.
because I mine is science and people. When you were saying that, I was thinking about myself. I mean, with all the employees, I actually take pride in I've probably managed over 35 coordinators in my career.
Oh,
And I
wow,
take I
that's
take
impressive.
pride. Yeah, it's been a lot. I take pride in their career outcomes. Like the one that I have now, the new one, she's close to a year of experience, but before us, she was just in college. And I take pride that I'm the first job employer she's had. And I know I'm gonna lose her soon because she's got bachelor, and I talk to her about this all the time. I say, hey, when they job recruiters are gonna reach out to you and tell me what they are, I'll tell you if it's a good idea or not, and I'll be
Hmm.
honest with you, because I can't compete on the salary, but you're gonna be gone because you're not gonna last long. And but I'm glad I'm able to help in this role. And then so having
Absolutely.
that intersection like yours is doing the same thing with people in tech, I think it's actually really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's more of a I don't believe, of course, there's some roles that you do a very specific task, let's say, that is can be isolated. But I think the secret is in collaboration, or the secret is not
Hmm.
working in isolated
Hmm.
groups. It's not
Hmm.
the CRAs are not just going to work within the CRA or within their CRO or within
Hmm.
their group or even sometimes within their sponsor if you're sponsor dedicated. But being able to just collaborate with other roles, industries, know more of what's out there, that's that's the secret.
And I think that's the only thing that the robots cannot do. Um, is this part where
Or
it's
any vendor or any technology.
or any vendor. That's the magic is connecting people, having empathy. Um, because like you said initially about tech, you don't know how to code, you don't know how to do apps.
Hmm.
Guess what? Guess what? That's not important anymore. Chat GPT can code now.
I
So
heard.
all those guys that have been coding, I think it's a thing of the past. What we need next is like orchestrators of all these things. Like, how do you
Agreed.
connect people to this tech? How do you connect people to the science? Because the raw ingredients are there. I can have the same ingredients in my kitchen as a Michelin star chef. Same.
But if I don't know, yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
how to put them together, right? This guy
exactly,
does. So the meal's gonna taste
exactly.
very different. Very different.
Exactly that. Exactly. And even at the vendor, you might have the best programmers, the best UX designers, the best whatever you need to put that together. But if you don't have the connection, the knowledge from on the ground people, what it means for
Hmm.
those people who are actually going to use your tool, it won't make a difference.
So do you think we're moving if from a economy, I mean, we're moving out of the age into the information age, which we're in now, and now we're moving into the automation AI age. Do you
Hmm.
think everybody's gonna have to learn how to be a conductor, or there's still gonna be a place for like everyone basically has to be a conductor, is my theory, because if AI gets better, I mean, how do you direct it into outcomes that are at of a value add, to the industries?
Maybe with just cross-functional teams or with multidisciplinary teams. I am I definitely agree with you, as in I believe I'm a conductor myself as well at core, in a way of I have curiosity about everything and I like to know a little bit about everything and then apply a little bit into everything. But I don't know, let's say, how to be that, how to code that AI, right? So there's always going to be something that I will not know that is needed. So I think definitely we will need to substitute that or to compensate that with multidisciplinary teams, with
Yeah.
people who will bring different focuses, different knowledge to the table, and then
Hmm.
together with that AI or with whatever technology is coming in the future, that's how it's going to just make sense for what we're designing.
Yeah, it does make sense to me, and I think like the example I brought up of answering 50 queries yesterday. Well, my
Mhm.
coordinators did. I only did three. I did the three they couldn't do.
Lucky
I did
you.
those three. But, imagine automating all those queries, okay?
Mhm.
So instead of 50, we're gonna have 200. We're just gonna ignore these things. Like, when you get emails, this too many emails from the same person, you just stop reading it. So I think you're gonna still need a human to, and this will be maybe the role of CRA in the future, call or get on the phone, or I don't know what they're gonna do, Zoom, and just problem solve with you, because
Yes,
it's not enough to just issue tasks. It's working to solve the problem together.
100%. And sometimes it's just, sometimes the role of the CRA can even be just of support or just of a confirmation of, a study coordinator might call you and say, Maria, I think I should do it this way. Can you just confirm? Can you just say that you see it in the same way? Those things, that confirmation, that support, the CRA can always or should always be able to provide that.
Well, I think we can leave a cliffhanger for next time, but everybody go connect with Maria. Thank you so much for coming on. I
Thank
know
you,
it's
Dan, for
late
having
over
me.
there, and always nice to meet a fellow Romanian that I had no idea you're
Absolutely.
Romanian, and you had no idea I was. So
Same. That's
everybody
great.
go
Thank you
connect.
for
Maria's LinkedIn is underneath, or if you're listening in the show notes. Catch y'all later. Thank you, Maria. Bye bye.
Thank you for having me. Until next time.